Welcome to Talking in Common, a podcast of all things lifestyle, family, relationships, well-being, kids and culture. This is not a how-to, but an insight into the lives of ourselves and others and how we all manage to get by. Hosted by myself, Kate Gadinsky, and my co-host, Sophie Panton. Take a listen and let's find out what we all have in common.
And we're back with another episode, everybody. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Sophie. We had no issues setting up our recording gear today.
That is a bonus for us.
Woohoo!
It's a major achievement for us.
I feel like that's the first time in a while that we haven't had technical difficulties.
Yeah. First time in a while. First time ever, perhaps.
Oh, speak for yourself.
Just You're head of technology around here. You should be onto it, girlfriend.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm pretty good. You know, just faced with the challenges of the juggle as always. A big shout out to my children's grandparents who look after my kids whilst I record this. Wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. You know who you are.
Yay for grandparents, hey?
Yes, big yay for grandparents. Today's episode topic, I think, is a good one. It's a relative topic. I think everyone's going to find something that they relate to in this.
I think so too. But before we reveal the exciting topic, what do we have in common?
The title's already, the episode's already titled.
Ding dong. Spot the sleep-deprived human in the room or on the screen, me.
We do this every time with guests, don't we? We're like, surprise, it's so-and-so. It's like the name's already in the title. But anyway, sorry.
Oh my God,
yes.
I've never thought of it like that. Anyway.
We talked about that once. You said that to me
we?
once. You were like, are you just going to say who it is? And I was like, well, it is in the title. But anyway.
Don't mind me. Okay, well, today's episode, hence the title, is Parenting is Hard. Or actually, why is parenting so hard? Yeah, actually, while we're recording this, we haven't actually finalised the exact title, but that is the topic.
Yes, that's the topic, exactly. That's the title of the conversation anyway, the discussion. And you guys have just got us today. This is just Kate and Soph's, not uninformed. Look, we're quite informed and we have lived experience in it. But look, I can't say it's evidence-based. But we found that you guys actually really enjoy the episodes just between us. We have done a lot of guest episodes this season, so you're stuck with us, just us. Also, we hope you love it.
Also, we felt like this is a topic that we have, quite a bit to say about from our own experiences. And also when we asked you guys, we got an incredible response. So hopefully it will be interesting for you all. If not, just switch off now and have a great day.
Don't switch off. Don't tell people to switch off.
No, I know it's going to be really good. We still haven't spoken about what we have in common. I don't know. I'm really, really tired. Are you tired?
Yeah, well, look, we're tired. We're both
so
tired. We're always
to say
tired.
That, isn't it?
Everyone's tired. All the parents are tired because it's hard.
It's bloody hard work, I tell you.
No, you're in a different phase, my love. You are in the, early getting up to your baby multiple times a night phase.
He's tricked me.
Yeah, has he?
Little trickster.
Did he give you a false? Did he give you a?
Oh my God, we've had weeks of some great sleep, but do you know what? I know this is a phase, and I have done it twice before. But all of a sudden this week, we are just seeing each other much more frequently throughout the night.
Yeah.
And while I love those little baby cuddles,
every night's a bit too much.
You just want to get the F to sleep.
Yes. Well, the problem with not having a good sleep is that you don't cope with things as well the next day. So it's not even so much about getting up in the night. Is it? The hangover from it. It's the outcome.
And the balance with the other kids.
Yeah.
The older kids.
I find I'm so much less tolerant, less motivated, less everything if I haven't had a good sleep. But it is amazing how you just
pull through,
adjust to function.
Yeah,
and pull through with less sleep. It's kind of crazy. I find it kind of crazy, but us humans are pretty amazing. So yeah, sure, sleep tiredness is one thing, but I think like finding so many commonalities between this topic, like obviously we've just been talking about it before we press record right now, and this week thinking about this topic. I think we've got so many things in common with finding parenting hard. And
Yeah.
obviously, after seeing the results from our questions to the audience, so does everyone else have this in common with
Yes.
us.
Should we start
Um,
with that? Do you think we should start with giving or sharing some of the answers that came back from the questions that we asked on Instagram before we kind of delve into the topic?
yeah, sure. Why not? It was quite fascinating, wasn't it?
It was. This definitely obviously is something that is of interest to you guys because we did get quite a big response when asking these questions. So we are all in this together.
Mm.
Where should we start, babe?
Well, the
Insta
first
results.
question, yeah, the first question that we asked was, have you ever described parenting as hard?
Yep.
And an astounding 85% of you said absolutely. There was no one who said never.
I would have been surprised. Actually, yeah, I think.
Oh, you meet those people out there that just seem like the most positive parent and they're just like all about the kids, and you just look at them and you're just like, have you ever felt what I felt? Like, are you just like this all the time? Are you a unicorn parent that just like
I'm sure
fucking
there are
loves
some
every
people
second of
out
it?
there. Yeah.
And you know how everyone says like, love every minute of it. It's like it's
Yeah,
impossible
it's
to love
hard.
every single minute because it's hard. I wonder how many times in this episode we're going to say it's hard.
Nothing
And
that's good ever comes easy, though. Remember that?
yes, good point. Yeah, I don't think it's meant to be easy,
No.
but I think I think that just today's modern world presents a lot of
Challenges.
challenges
Yeah.
that are contributing for it to be harder than what it potentially should be, needs to be, and used to be.
Yeah.
With all of these modern conveniences, I think they also add to challenges.
Extra stress, extra pressure, extra anxiety,
Yes.
extra distraction.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to our answers though. Absolutely 85%, never was 0%, and on occasions 15%.
Yeah. And this was like with like over 100 results. So that's like a lot of people contributing to those percentages.
Yes.
So,
Thanks, guys.
yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for your input. We appreciate it because even for us, it's nice to be like, oh, it is great to feel like other people are having, same common experiences.
Yeah,
Makes you feel better.
absolutely. So, our next question was, what has been the hardest or most challenging part?
This
Um,
was really interesting
yeah, I will
because,
read a couple out, I think.
yeah, but there was like floods of people sharing their different challenges, and it just really cemented that
Mm,
everyone is really finding it really challenging and they are finding it hard, and for so many different
reasons.
reasons. It's like no wonder we're all finding this hard because there is limitless reasons for why people are finding this hard. But yeah, there were a few common answers, weren't there?
Yes,
Like,
some of the top ones were relentlessness, mental load, shift in identity, no village, or slash. A couple of people answered that they don't live close to many friends and live close to zero family, so that would be
mm,
quite tricky, I think.
mm,
Lack of control, the never-ending game of trying to find the balance, and meeting the needs of all of your different children if you have subsequent children.
mm.
But should we read a couple specific
Yeah,
ones?
yeah, sure, go for it. The mental load was a really common one, and I think most mothers or primary parents can relate to that
Yeah.
because there is a lot of discussion around the mother's mental load, and for good reason, because it is a lot. And yeah, also the relentlessness that came up quite a few times.
So one said it used to be the unknown and comparison, but now kids are older, it's emotional slash social issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another one was the wildly huge emotions that came with becoming a mum, realizing mortality and how precious life is, etc. Also, the lack of control, surrendering is perhaps the greatest lesson so far.
Yeah, the greatest lesson, but also
Yes.
the hardest lesson.
Yes, seriously.
Oh my God, the surrender, and just, also just, giving into so many things that I never thought that I would have used to
that you wouldn't give up, learning to be
give up
selfless.
or give into, or learning to be selfless.
Another one was major shift in identity, finding myself again,
Mm,
having having the time and the space to do so. So yeah, that can
yeah.
be a very tricky one. And I know we have spoken about this on the podcast before, and that's a real struggle for a lot of women after having babies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
managing,
feel that one.
yeah, managing my own triggers to ensure I show up for their needs completely.
Yes. Oh my God. I feel this one too. Like
Yeah.
I get triggered by certain behaviors that my kids do or certain things that my kids
Mm,
do that I'm just like, I actually can't deal with that. Like when
yeah.
they do certain things, it triggers me to the point where I actually just have to walk away because I can't
Yeah.
deal. Otherwise, I'm going to scream at them or I'm going to get so frustrated or, and it's really interesting. It like brings out this new mirror to yourself of
Yeah. You're
like,
like, why is that so triggering
why
for
is that
me?
so triggering? What is it that's happened in the past, or what is that insecurity that brings that up? Like, yeah, that's a that's a big one for me too.
I often find when you'd said about walking away or walking out of the room, like often I have to just be like,
Mm,
and hold my breath and take a really
mm,
deep breath and walk away, because
mm.
otherwise I know I'm just going to react
Yeah,
and I'm going to get angry and I'm going to yell, and then I'm probably going to feel really guilty.
yeah.
So yes, of course I don't. We're not always able to control that, but yeah,
Mm.
sometimes you just have to walk away.
Well, that's right, isn't it?
Um,
You don't always get that moment to walk away and breathe. Sometimes you explode and then regret it and apologize and realize next time I have to walk away and breathe.
Another one, pursuing your career with the constant mum guilt.
Yeah, the mum guilt was another one that came up a lot,
Yeah.
wasn't it? And we have done a whole episode on the mum guilt. I can't remember the number. It was last season, season 3, I think, but I can't
Yeah,
remember
we
the
did a
number
whole
of the
episode on mum
episode.
guilt.
Yeah, but go back and find that one in the archives and have a listen to that one because we explored that more deeply.
Yeah, feeling like you can't meet everyone's needs, patience and pace. The world is so fast, it's hard to find any balance to enjoy it.
Mm,
So yeah, some lots of different answers, but a lot of common ones as well.
yeah.
Um,
And I
what
think a lot of those answers are, yeah, a perfect example of, once we had done a little bit more thinking about what were the contributing factors, a lot of those answers are the answer to the factors that we discovered or that we talked about.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last thing that we asked was, what are the top contributing factors, in your opinion, that make it harder than perhaps it should be or needs to be? Before we talk about the answers, what are yours?
I
We
think
said isolation, advancing technology, comparison, and external societal pressures, but you might have something different other than that.
Well, no, I think in a way I can relate in like little bits to all of these, to be honest. I
Mm,
think one that I was speaking about with you yesterday was advancing technology.
mm,
Like, we just have instant access to so much information. It's like it's so overwhelming, it's so consuming, it's really exhausting. And I feel like it causes us a lot of anxiety,
mm,
trying to, I guess, navigate that. And literally, I can pick up my phone right now. I can Google anything about parenting, about, if you think your child's sick with something, about sleep. And there are so many answers, there's so many conflicting answers. And we're kind of losing that ability sometimes to actually just use our intuition as a parent.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I feel like, as much as it is great, like it is so good that we have this available to us, there's also a lot of negative impacts to that as well.
Absolutely.
Also, and then on the flip side of that as well, with technology, I've got kids, well, my oldest daughter, who's now at an age where she is wanting to use technology a lot more. And so that is a tricky thing to navigate because it is also new. We didn't have this type of technology when we were growing up, and it's
Mm,
only going to get more full on and more intense. So trying to, I guess, as a parent, teach her about that and navigate through that as sensibly and as safely as we can. Don't know if that
mm,
was a confusing answer because I kind of spoke about technology in two different ways.
but that's the truth of it. It's like
Yeah. Um,
navigating it for yourself, but also navigating it for your children.
I think we were also talking about isolation before. I that's not so much of a thing for me at all now. I feel like maybe that was more relevant when I had younger children, particularly when Nina was born, because I didn't have any other friends really that had kids or babies. So I did kind of feel like, yeah, I was going through a lot of that on my own.
Mm,
But yeah, probably advancing technology and maybe external societal pressures, I think, a little
mm.
bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit of like all of the above.
Mm,
Um, I mean, we wrote those prompts, so obviously we both feel those prompts.
mm.
But yeah, for me at the moment, it's definitely a big one is the isolation because of the hours that my partner works. I basically solo parent from like, whenever the kids get up to whenever they go to bed, 7 till 7, 12 hours a day on my own
Whew.
during the week. And and I have found that that is really isolating.
Mm,
And even though, I have the support of my partner, I have the support of my family and friends, but I've found that the more I immerse myself into like the community, Honey's Kinder, my friendships, and I see people more often, I make those connections. It's so much easier. I feel so much
mm.
better about being a parent. The example that I was talking to you about earlier was even if you just go to the playground and meet a friend there with their kids compared to going to the playground with your kids on your own, it's so much more enjoyable because everyone's getting a little piece of what they
Oh,
need.
so much
You know,
better.
you get to have a conversation with an adult and maybe talk about a few things that you're both going through, and then that makes you feel more comforted because someone's
Mm,
feeling the same things and your kids have someone to play with, so they're not demanding the need of you to play with them, and you get a little bit of a break. And like it just shows that, when you do this with other people, you feel so much more comforted and confident in it. I
yeah.
think like when you're doing it alone, it's so hard to know if what you're doing is the right thing or if it's even working or if anyone else is feeling the way that you're feeling. Like it's just amazing how quickly you can feel isolated in parenthood, in motherhood.
Part of the reason we started the podcast.
Totally,
We were
yeah.
talking so much. Remember, like during the lockdown, we were talking like
Yes.
every day for like 2 hours on the phone
Yes, about
about,
our parenting
yeah, like you were
experiences.
telling me about what was happening with Honey because she had a new baby and obviously it was your first
Mm,
baby. And I was obviously telling you about like my two kids and we were chatting. We were like, we literally should just start a podcast
mm,
because
mm.
we would always feel so much better having those chats to
Better.
make us feel more normal and human and,
100%.
yeah, supported.
100%. And then the other big thing for me is the technology as well. Like I
Mm.
really struggle with, and again, like you make a good point, like you felt that isolation probably a little bit more when your kids were little because, yeah, you're kind of confined by your home a lot more. You've got to be
Mm.
home for sleep times and blah, blah, all that sort of stuff. So you kind of are physically more isolated. But it's it's a really challenging balance trying to also do other things in your own home whilst looking after the kids.
Mm.
And because I am home with my kids so much at the moment, and I do try to do a bit of contract work on and off. I have been lately, which has been great, and doing things like this, the podcast, even just keeping up with life admin,
Mm.
having the phone dinging at you and distracting you and having that pressure to respond to things immediately and be organized and be up to date and do your due diligence to your work or friends or via communication on
Mm.
technology. I find it so overwhelming, so anxiety
It's
triggering.
such a trigger for you, yeah.
I just feel like that's a really big challenge, and it's only becoming more and more part of our life, more immediate. Like it's really full on.
It's
I find that
intense. And it's
it's
hard to
really
have
intense.
boundaries too because people can just contact you all the time.
Any time of the day, yeah. I mean, I try to. I put like the do not disturb,
Yeah.
but I almost want to have like how you can set like an automatic email
You want that on your phone.
response.
You
I
c
want that like on my phone
I'm
for a phone
sure,
call
babe,
or a
I'm sure you
message.
can. You can do one
Like
while you're you can do one while you're driving.
like how does it respond
It says
to?
like, "I'm currently driving with blah, blah, blah,
Okay, of
blah,"
course it
like
already exists. Technology's so fucking advanced. Of
of
course that
course it
already
is, and I'm sure
exists.
what you're talking about. you can probably do as well. But it does
Yeah,
tell
I
you,
want
when someone's got their phone on do not disturb.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the basic broad example, but I kind of want I'm busy mothering right now. I can't talk to you until
BRB when I'm
Friday in
ready.
2 years. Yeah, BRB when I'm ready, which will be never. No, but do you know what I mean? Like, you get
Um,
I'll get like a work call and I've got like my baby screaming and my toddler demanding something, and or like even just when you and I talk on the phone, like as soon as you pick up your phone, but you have
Everyone
to take
wants
that
everything from
call.
you when you pick up the phone.
Yeah,
Everyone's fine, not all the time, but everyone's like happily doing their thing until you
until
pick up
you
the
pick up
phone
your
or
phone.
until
Yeah.
you sit down at your laptop.
Yeah, it's hard, that part. Anyway, so
Um,
that was the contribution from you guys, or did we talk about the answers from the audience yet?
uh,
No, I don't think we did. So the first answer was isolation, and 41% of you had answered isolation. The second one was the advancing technology. 18% said that. Comparison was 6%, which is lower than I thought. I thought like with
mm,
Instagram and seeing so many other like motherhood blogs and parenting advice and stuff, I thought people would be
yeah, more.
there would be a bigger percentage of comparison.
Maybe people are starting to see through a lot of that a little bit more,
Yeah.
filter
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
through some of the stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last one was external societal pressures, which was 35%. So yeah, fair chunk of you. But yeah,
Um,
quite evenly spread, I suppose, between the different challenges.
I shouldn't say we should just jump back for a sec because we didn't answer the question that was the hardest. What is the hardest part of parenting, which we spoke about? I don't think we spoke about what we both find the hardest part of parenting, or did we? Excuse my brain
I
today.
feel like we're going to probably give a lot of our own personal examples
In a
when we
minute.
go
All right, we'll get
through.
to it.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I mean, I find lots of things. There's not one single
Nah,
thing for
there's quite
me.
a lot.
Um, yeah. So the way that we thought we would structure this, because obviously, like you guys showed in your answers about what you find challenging, um, we found there's obviously a lot of different things that people find hard and challenging about parenting, but we found this article titled 8 Reasons Why Parenting in the Modern World is So Hard, and this was written by Dr. Amanda Hale, and they point out 8 contributing factors to why it's hard, and so we thought we would just go through them and then kind of unpack them in our own way and with our personal experiences.
Yep.
So the first one, which, a lot of you obviously feel this deeply with your answers, is we are not meant to do this alone. And obviously, from what I was just explaining about my experience with the isolation, I also feel this one deeply.
And
And it's like that age old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And
and everyone's always going, where is that village? You
and
know.
that's exactly right. In today's modern world, like, where the fuck is that village?
I mean, some cultures, it's incredible how, they have babies and essentially all they focus on, if we go back to
Mm,
just talking about babies for a second, all they focus on for those first 60 days or however many weeks is just breastfeeding and lying down and resting.
mm,
You don't do anything else. No
yeah.
cooking, no cleaning, no washing. Everything else is done for you. Look, I feel like there could be a bit of a balance between that. Like that would be quite intense all of a sudden to have your baby and just lie in bed and breastfeed and that's it.
Yeah.
um, but like it's not like that in our in our worlds, is it? And even as your kids get
No.
older, like you've got support from family and friends,
Yeah.
but at the same time, a lot of the parenting is still done, as you
Mm.
said, solo or, with you and your partner, which can
Yeah. In
also be
your
a
own
lot
home.
in your own
Like,
home.
in the past, it's been the whole community that was part of parenting, and the modern setup of one or two parents raising children alone is quite unusual, like for our sort of human instincts, for our human needs.
Yep.
So it's a very clear and obvious contributing factor, in my opinion, that the way that we do things these days in such sort of isolated environments in our own homes with your single parent or two
Mm.
parents or whatever it is isn't kind of like the way that it's meant to be.
Do you also feel the pressure that you should be doing all these things yourself? Like you don't always want to ask for help or rely on someone else because you're like, no, 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 this is my role as a mum or as a
Mm.
parent. Certain things where maybe you could ask someone to help with something, but you're like, no, 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 like I need to do it. Do you feel like
Absolutely.
that? Yeah, that
Yeah,
pressure.
well,
That's like a
that's
societal thing of like being a good mum or a good dad.
yeah, and being a good woman,
Yeah.
like being a good woman that knows how to be a good mother, like that's what society puts that expectation on us, and previous recent history of women in history and stay-at-home mothers in history and stuff like that. You have to. It's also that like, you've got to do it all kind of culture. Like it's it puts very unrealistic standards on women in
Mm.
particular, I think, and on mothers. The second one is science is powerful.
Mm.
And this is interesting because we have talked a lot about, certain feelings and experiences with particularly motherhood because we're the people going through pregnancies and things like that, but how our brain changes. And, we've talked a lot about this sort of like evidence-based science
Yeah, how your brain changes
backing that.
during pregnancy and then post baby and then, going through matrescence and all of that.
Yeah, and this science and this evidence-based backup that is confirming our feelings that we're
Yeah.
experiencing. Um, and yeah, and so in this article, it reads, an advantage of this is that parents have heaps of evidence-based information available to them about parenting. A disadvantage of this is that many parents today are approaching parenting from a head versus heart space.
Mm.
So we have done a full episode on
Sorry.
trusting your gut and intuition as well, and this plays exactly into this example, that we have books and Google and information like at our disposal.
To tell us
So
what to do and how to think, basically, how to parent.
yeah, and it takes away our natural instinct to trust our gut and follow what we feel is right for our own child.
Mm.
And often, like an um, evidence-based advice might not work for your unique
Mm.
scenario. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like your child might be having an issue, so you look up what a professional would do or what the evidence based advice says,
Mm.
and then that doesn't work for you, so you feel that you failed.
Yeah. And
But
but how often are you going to feel that you've failed? Because everybody's babies and kids are different. So yes, some things might work universally, but we're also different. How
mm,
can one or two approaches work for everybody?
mm. So it's like no wonder that is another failure in why we find things hard, like there's so much information out there that we kind of default in leaning on to parent when it's just not necessarily going to be the right thing for our child.
Or how
But
often do you
like,
Google, babe? Do you Google a lot?
yeah, I actually don't Google a lot, but I research a lot. Like
Mm. Look up
I
something
specifically,
specific. Yeah.
yeah, like there's certain people that I
Places you would go to read certain things or
yeah, there's certain people that I like believe their sort of philosophies or their values or
yeah.
their education, and so I'll look them up. But yeah, I actually don't often just randomly Google like what is that red mark on my child's face. Like
Yeah.
I don't Google stuff
Don't
like
need
that
any
because
more anxiety triggers.
yeah, it is just such a minefield. It's
Mm.
really hard to find the answer that you want doing it that way. But I absolutely do search
Well, and
things that
conflicting to do it that way.
yeah, and just like awful. Don't do it. Everybody knows not to do that. But then they do, they also give another good example in this that, science is also obviously hugely powerful and
Mm.
beneficial. And they talk about the SIDS like Back is Best campaign for babies, which is a perfect example of how science has made information available that's literally saved the lives of
Yeah.
children today. So there's heaps of things like that, like medical advice and things like that now that we're much more informed and aware of than past generations,
Mm.
which we're very lucky to have that sort of access to information. But it's just like the opposite side to the coin of that that's also detrimental to
Yeah.
us. that
Yeah.
we've like lost our way of trusting our gut, using
Yeah.
our instincts, using our motherly instinct, which is so strong.
Yeah. And, m- more than not, it's always right. I find anyway, when you do
Yes.
follow it and listen to it. So, all
Yeah.
right. The next one was limited exposure. Limited exposure. Sorry, babe. In human history, it says individuals would have had lots of exposure to babies and children before having one of their own. With larger families and different social structures, experiences with younger siblings, nieces, nephews, would have been a big part of life.
Mm.
Whereas now that's not always necessarily the case. I suppose this is a pretty case by case scenario because it really depends on your family
Mm.
and who you're around. But
I suppose it's another example of like, you know, in history, like people would have been raised more in their village, more in their community,
yeah,
all of that sort of thing. So they would have had that exposure. But like you and I were discussing from our personal points of view,
mm,
um, when I was younger, I did a lot of babysitting. And so I was around a lot of babies and things like that before I had my own child. So I had some experience in some way. But I remember when you had your first child, you were like, I've never even changed a
I
nappy
had never
before.
literally changed a nappy.
Yeah,
And I mean, yes, as we all say, all parents are learning as they go, but I literally was learning
on
everything
the job.
as on the job. And no,
Mm.
like you didn't have a baby, none of my other friends had babies. Like,
Mm.
so it really was, yeah,
That would have been hard.
yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah.
And that was, I suppose when you talk back to the isolating, like isolating in a way of like, I had family around and my husband's like a very hands-on parent. So I wasn't actually isolated as in like I wasn't just home with a baby, nonstop all the time by myself. But it was
Mm.
isolating in the way of I'd
The
moved
experience.
into something so massive and
Mm.
everybody, like all my friends were still in a completely different stage to me.
Mm.
So there was
I was still at the nightclub.
whoop whoop. So yeah, so that is definitely something, and it's so big when you become a parent.
Mm.
It's massive.
Yeah. So even though that doesn't seem like a really huge one that, maybe is contributing to why parenting is so hard, but still a really interesting
Yeah,
point of view or fact and yeah, I mean, just those two examples alone, like me having experiences with babies because of my past of babysitting compared to your no experience with babies before
mm.
you had your own baby, like very different experiences, even though I must say once I had my own baby it was completely different anyway.
Yeah, it's so different. But also, do you find, I don't know if this is relevant to this bit, but I feel like it is a little bit when you talk to, often like our parents and who are obviously from a very different generation, the way that they talk about what it was like when they had kids or the way that they remember it is so different to now, like the way that we all
Mm.
about parenting. Like,
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah,
almost
I
feel
mean,
like I don't know if they forget certain parts of it or they just kind of got on with it a bit more.
well, there was definitely more of that, just like,
Yeah,
you know,
we're
keep up and
so
carry
like
on kind of mentality.
we're not
Like
like that.
there's
We like analyze every little thing
everything,
of
yeah,
our
to the
kids.
point where it makes us fucking insane. But like even my mum says to me all the time, and like, well, not no, she doesn't say this to me all the time. She often says to myself and my siblings, like, "Oh, you guys complain a lot, like about the kids or parenting and stuff." And my mum's amazing. Like, love you, mum. Shout out. Don't want this to come across the wrong way, but she's kind of right, like we do complain about everything all the time because it's harder. She will also then back it up with, I do feel like it's harder for you guys now these days,
Mm,
it's just so different. Like you've complicated everything. Everything's so complicated. Like
yeah, they
just
didn't
put
know
the baby
everything
to
we know
bed. If
either.
the baby cries, get it up, like whatever. Like, all this sort of stuff, like what you were
Yeah,
talking about going through with your baby at the moment. Like,
yeah,
I'm doing this bridging nap. Should I
trying
take away
this.
the dummy? Should I do this? Should I listen to that
Yeah.
person's advice? Should I do this? Should I try this strategy or this parenting style? It's just like, it's too freaking much.
Well,
Like,
the other thing is I've also had two kids before, and although they're all
yeah.
different, I didn't feel like, unless I've completely forgotten, I didn't feel this amount of like noise and pressure when I as particularly when I had Nina, because now every single thing, like, particularly on social media, is all about, like, it's probably a lot of the pages that I follow and a
Yeah.
lot of the things
And
that are
from the
targeted at me
podcast
and
too.
from the podcast. But there's
Mm.
so much information overload that it's hard not
Mm.
to analyze every little thing and try this and try that, when
That's
why
really
wouldn't I just stick
interesting.
to my gut, and why wouldn't I just kind of approach it how I have in the past, and then if that doesn't work, then look at something else. But you're
Yes.
always
Instead of
trying to be
going
like,
to
but I
something
could do
first.
this, or I could try this. The amount
Yeah.
of time that I've wasted, or not wasted, but this week spent in my head being like, what should
Mm.
I do with this? Is like far out. It just
Yeah. When
causes
you
so
could have just
much unnecessary, like,
Yeah. You could have just
shit.
rolled on with it and would have happened and the same outcome would have happened anyway, except the inner dialogue in your head is like, ah! And then it's the same outcome anyway.
Anyway, so yeah, and sorry, my mum as well will often say like, "God, we didn't know about that when I had you guys." Like,
Yes.
there's
Oh,
so
yeah. My
many
mum says that
things,
too.
like,
Yes.
"Oh, we didn't know all this stuff."
All this
So
crap.
all this crap, which, as we pointed out before, there are a lot of really important things
Mm.
um, that we do know about now, which literally save lives and and help a lot of people.
Yeah.
But equally, there is a lot of stuff that we probably don't even need to know about.
Yeah. Or just like you said, a lot of noise, a
Yeah,
lot of
a lot of
extra
noise.
noise. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next one, number 4, is rapidly changing technology. I feel like you spoke a little bit oh no, we both spoke a little bit about this
Mhm.
before. But yeah, like parents today are preparing children for a world that we're really unsure
Mm.
what it's going to look like in terms of technology. So how do we how do we teach and guide them through something that we don't even know about yet? Like, that's really strange and hard.
This is something that Mackie and I talk about a lot because of the stage that particularly Nina's at the
Yeah,
moment. Because y- look, I'm not going to
which
speak.
is
I'm not going to say what you.
7
And
years
I'm
old.
not going to say what you should and shouldn't do. Like, it's up to every individual, but it's kind of that thing of, I think you don't want to completely be like, well, no, you can't do that and you can't have this. Like, and I'm not talking about, there's no way she's getting things like Instagram or TikTok or none of that. But, just with certain things, you can't, completely strip them of everything, because
Mm,
you kind of have to move a little bit with the times.
yeah.
Because if you don't, then that's going to cause a lot of issues as well. But at the same time, how do we kind of educate them on something that we don't know a whole lot about? Like, obviously
Mm,
we've been talking to other parents that have kids of similar ages, and getting
but they
some,
don't know.
no,
They
but
don't know
but just
either.
getting their take on it, or maybe
Yeah.
parents. We've got a couple of friends that have kids that are a little bit older, so who have already kind of gone through that little stage a little bit. I mean, the school is great, they do offer different things, like provide some resources and stuff, but it is
Mm,
really, really tricky.
yeah.
And then also trying to explain it to your kids so they can
Mm,
understand, like, the dangers of it.
mm, yeah.
But yeah, you can't not go with it, but at the same time, like, you've got to have rules and boundaries. But
Mm,
anyway, it's still a work in progress. We will do an episode
yeah.
on this, we've been saying, for
Yeah, yeah,
anyone
yeah,
that's
we
got,
should.
that's interested. And I think it's actually something that can be relatable to all parents, because you might not be at that stage now, but you will be within the next however many years. And what's
Yeah.
better than to walk into something like that, with a bit
Yeah.
of knowledge and
Yeah,
confidence, I think.
equipped with some
Equipped.
education. I think the scariest thing for me in that sense is that, like, the earlier you allow them to get on it, you can't reverse it. So once
Mm,
they're on it, they're on it. And I think social media in particular, obviously, once you see what other people are doing in the world, it opens up a lot of self reflection, I
mhm.
suppose. Why do they look like that and I don't look like, or why do they get to do that and I don't, or they're doing things very differently to how we do things in my family. Why do they, suddenly there's all this comparison. And I think, like, as they say, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm,
And as kids, for kids, I just want to prolong that freedom and experience of joy and no self judgment and
mm.
lots of self compassion and just freedom within themselves to express themselves and to be children, because the sooner you allow them into that more adult world of judgment and
They grow up quickly.
comparison, they grow up quickly, and you can't reverse it, you know? So it's like,
Well, it happens at school anyway, with even without online. Like that starts to happen pretty
mm,
early, like just yeah, very early. And I find often it's often the kids that have older siblings are the ones that are more advanced in doing things on their iPads or
totally.
whatever than the other kids because
Yeah.
you see how that rolls. The older kids are doing it, they're more exposed to it. But it's not
Mm,
so much social media with Nina's age. It's more like this online. We're talking about like gaming things like
mm,
Minecraft and Roblox, and that's like a whole other thing. So that's kind of more
right.
what we're dealing with at the moment. Um, but yeah, it's full on. I heard something on
Mm,
the radio the other day about like the negative effects of social media and that how so many, I can't remember the percentage, but it was really high of young women um, as young as 18 are all getting so much like what are we talking about, like face injectables,
oh,
Botox, just like cosmetic procedures done. And they're putting
mm,
this all down to the comparisons from social media, you
mm.
know? So
Yeah,
pretty full
right.
on.
Very
Anyway,
full on. I mean, that's taking it really next level, like changing
18's
your
young.
physical
Yeah.
appearance.
I
Mm,
guarantee
mm,
there'd be kids that would be doing it at 17 if they could.
mm. Yeah, isn't Kylie Jenner the pioneer of this? Didn't she get her lips done at like 16 or
Probably.
something? And that's why that's why she started this whole
Holy
crazy
stuff.
trend. Mm.
All right.
The next one is the schooling system. This one's like quite interesting, I think, because like, you know, in our society, you're just like, yeah, the next thing when they turn this age, they go to school and then they get their education, and that's the best
Mm,
thing. But this article says that the modern schooling system is actually an incredibly unusual environment. The way in which school and academic cognitive outcomes and achievement dominates childhood today shifts the way parents prioritize goals. Some parents with the best intentions end up prioritizing cognitive development at the expense of mental health and the child parent relationships.
mm,
So I think that's like actually a really good point and something to consider once you do have school age children.
mm,
Um, and I think I've found this kind of interesting because, yeah, like I said, you don't really think about it. Like, obviously, an education is really important and probably one of the best things that we can give our kids. But when they're young and still developing,
mm,
and their brains are still underdeveloped, and they still really need like a really strong, loving, nurturing environment at home, the school environment is kind of a bit out of your control.
yeah.
Um, and like Honey went to a Steiner kindergarten, for
Mm,
example, and I just found that the philosophy of that, which is really nurturing and gentle and sort of ceremonial based
mm,
and nature based, and you know, tapping into things like the changes of the seasons and how that should change your food and your activities and the things that you do around the home and all of that
mm.
sort of stuff, which I just think is such a fundamental part for young children to kind of grow up in that sort of
Environment.
environment. The way that like our schooling curriculum is, that's probably quite diverse all across
Mm.
the world, but in Australia it is pretty rigid.
Yeah, well, it
And
depends. It depends on though the philosophy of the school because they have like different teaching methods. But
yeah,
overall, you're
yeah,
right.
and the
Yeah,
schools as well, but I suppose just the general, like, you know, whatever it is, 9 till 3 p.m. structure, and you sit in a classroom and you
so
learn about this
specific.
subject ABC, and then you go home and you have to do homework and you don't have that much family time and you have to be awake at this time every day. Like, I think a lot of that, yeah, like it does make a lot of sense. Like, as humans, we have different emotions and feelings and experiences every day, that sort of rigid structure doesn't
Doesn't work for
necessarily
everyone.
work for everyone. Yeah.
We were having a conversation about this morning before I took the kids to school because Mackie's like, I don't think homework should be a thing. And I was kind of like, can you just stop saying that for 2 seconds? Because,
Yeah,
like,
just in front of the kids.
Nina literally called out, "I can hear you." So we were saying something about one of the teachers at the school. And then we were saying, I don't think homework should be a thing, because Nina does have, she's got her reading and her numbers and things that they have to do. And he's like, "I've always thought it's ridiculous. They should be able to come home and relax. They're at school. They're learning all day. Why should, when they come home, should we as parents then have to, like, basically make sure that they do their homework?" Look, there's pros and cons, and I do agree with it to some point, and particularly when they're young. But yeah, it is a lot, because often Nina will come home exhausted, overstimulated, tired, emotional, and the last thing she wants to do is schoolwork.
Yeah,
She just
absolutely.
wants
And
to hang out with us. She'll say, "I just want to relax."
yeah,
So
like
it's
we do
finding
when we
that
get home
balance.
from work or whatever it is.
So sometimes I'll just say to her, if she's I'll just be like, "You know what? It's all good. You're too tired. Like, just chill." And then other
Yeah,
times we have to have a battle and I have to make her do it.
yeah,
But this is all the the challenges and the role of being a parent.
yeah. And
But
like, does it take away their need for autonomy a little bit? For example, like I think it's like a really ingrained human need to feel like freedom and independence, and to be able to feel self-motivated. You need that.
yeah.
So, does that structure really support that?
I,
Like for some kids,
some
I'm
kids
sure it
really need it.
does.
I think I think the structure can be really good for a lot of kids and for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons, but I think kids all learn in completely different ways, and as you
Mm,
said, they have very different needs and different approaches work. So it can be quite tricky when
mm,
it's like this, one or two approaches fits all type
mm.
thing with school. We could homeschool,
Yeah, but
babe. That'd be the other alternative.
yeah,
No,
well,
thank
I
you.
mean,
You've thought
I,
about it.
well, like, in a different world where it wasn't this like really abnormal thing to homeschool, like absolutely. Like it doesn't have to
Mm,
be this sort of setup where you have to be the teacher and you have to sit down with them for 8 hours a day and teach them maths. And like I'm pretty sure the homeschooling like structure
mm,
is quite open. You just have to oh, whoopsie, just knocked my microphone. You just have to meet certain um like you just have to meet certain things as part of the education department
yeah.
kind of defines, but I don't think it has to be like that. Like
No,
that's what
it's
I'm
not.
saying,
It's
like the
different to normal school.
yeah, and like but that's what I'm saying, like the philosophy, like the Steiner philosophy for example, is like education is about nature-based play and
Mm,
things like that. Like you learn things from nature and from the world and from doing things in the home,
mm,
and especially when kids are young. Like sure, when they're older and they need to learn about history and
yeah.
science to be a part of society and to get a job in society, different story. But when they're young, like I do I
Does really like it. So for her, it does work. But
yeah.
you know,
And if we're taking this back to the reasons about why parenting is
mm,
so hard, that's what this statement is making, is that parents start prioritizing cognitive development over the mental health and the relationships with you,
mm,
because of the way the schooling structure is set up.
yeah,
People like it's more important to get good marks and do your homework,
mm.
whereas and that puts stress and pressure on the child and therefore the parent.
And
Whereas
then
if
we're
you were
all
more
stressed.
focused, then everyone's stressed. Whereas
Yeah.
if you were more focused on their well-being and their development and their connection with you, then maybe everyone's freaking happier.
Mm.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. Okay.
All right,
Getting all
let's move
revved
on.
up. Getting all like. "Rrr." Ah. The next one was fewer children. So it said, meaning that with less children, there is more pressure on that child and therefore the parent to get it right with that child. This is an interesting one. I feel like, look, I'm a mother of 3 now.
Yeah. You got
I've
multiples,
got
babe. This
multiples.
does not relate to you, this one.
I'm out of the doubles even. I've got
Yeah.
multiples.
Yeah.
No, but I think again, like that does make a lot of sense. But I think again, this one is we do put. I mean, okay, I can only really talk for myself, but I know you well enough to know that you're the same. We do put so much into every little thing that our children does. Like
Mm.
every aspect we're thinking of wanting to do the right thing. You know, you
Mm.
want to be a really hands-on parent, but you don't want to be a helicopter parent. You want to like be able to like drop them off and pick them up, and you want to make sure they're eating like really good meals all the time. And you want to make sure they're happy with for me, you know, with their friends, and you want to make sure that I don't know,
Everything
there's
is
just
perfect.
everything is perfect all the
Yeah.
time, you know,
Yeah.
because and I honestly think of how they're feeling all the time.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you heard of
We're
that?
so
Have you heard that?
consumed. I'm so consumed by my kids and I love them and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way, but it is very consuming.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings us to another good point about like how important it is to put yourself first as a parent as well. Because
Mm.
have you heard that saying that like you're only ever as happy as your unhappiest child?
Mhm.
Um, and it's really a sign of exactly what you're saying. You know, you're constantly considering their feelings and what's affecting them and how their relationships are and their health is
Mm.
and all of that sort of thing. And if they're suffering in some way, then you can't be happy. And I think that's just naturally ingrained in us as parents. But you can't show up for them and you can't provide for them in the best way that if you're not looking after yourself.
Yeah,
And I mean,
so
like
true.
I'm saying this, but I certainly don't practice this yet. And I'm like early on in my parenting experience where I'm
Mm.
only just learning this. Because I have got to the point of like defeat and burnout and
Yeah.
I'm really not coping and all of that sort of stuff, that I now realize like I absolutely have to do the things that fill my cup and
Yeah.
look after myself so I can be that mum
Parent.
to give them everything they need.
I'm such a
Um,
better parent, I feel, when I go out and do something for myself. Or even if me and
we all
Mackie
are
go out for dinner, or if
100%.
I go out with a friend or anything, have time, whatever it is, like, because then you turn up and you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. You know,
Yes.
I'm
And
feeling
you
good.
still have to be you.
Yeah,
Like you actually still exist in the world as an individual, even
yeah,
though your life has changed so dramatically and now everything revolves around caring and mothering them. Like you're still you
yeah,
and you still have a place in this world to be you.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a really weird transition in life in the early days when you're just learning and discovering all that.
I th-
And I think this is like goes back to a lot of people's answers in the questions that we did, like, you know, that identity shift thing. It's like, who
mm,
am I now that I'm a parent, and how do I prioritize myself when all I care about is the well-being of my kids and the happiness of my kids? Like, it's a very, very slippery slope.
I think another thing, actually, just throwing this in that puts so much pressure and can make parenting quite hard is a lot of people, you know, when they're pregnant, you'll hear say, particularly with the first child, yeah, we're having a baby, but like our life isn't going to change. The baby's
Yeah.
just going to come along with our life and fit in with us. And
Mm,
of course, your life is going to change. You're having a baby.
mm,
Your life is not going to be what it was. You can still
mm,
have a great life and you can still do things that you love, but a baby's not just going to come and go with the flow for the next
mm.
however many years. Like,
But did you feel like that a bit? Did you
um,
know that how dramatically your life was going to change? Do you remember feeling like,
I mean, it's certainly a massive shock because I don't think
yeah,
you think about how consuming it is.
yeah? I mean,
I
I have to admit, I was a little bit like
yeah,
that.
you
I was
don't
like,
know
yeah,
just
the
because you've
baby's just going to slip into my life, and I'll
no,
keep doing what I'm doing.
yeah. I think
No,
no, it does. It just doesn't. It just doesn't roll like that. And
no,
like babies, like
certainly
that,
not.
kids and babies, they don't go with the flow on a whole. I'm sorry, like whoever says that they go with the flow, it just doesn't happen. Yes, there are days where you can go with the flow, or you're, but in a whole, like no,
No,
Of
Well,
course,
they
it's
have
going to
needs,
change. They
and
have needs, and
their needs are not often met in the flow of your flow. They can go in their own
you can
flow.
create your own flow, but yeah, it's not just
Mm,
going to be the same. So I think
mm,
that's also why, so many women struggle with this whole identity shift as well, because you're never going
mm,
to be the same person that you were.
mm. Absolutely. We did digress a little bit from that
Yeah,
point, which
sorry.
was
Yeah.
fewer children, but um, yeah, I think that is obviously it's not particularly relevant to us because we've both got multiple kids, but
Mm,
yeah, it is a really interesting point, like for those single children and parents of only children.
mm,
I can understand that you have like, this one child to do the best that you could do. Whereas once you've got a few, you're like, oh, that one's doing really well in this, that one's struggling with that a little bit, but that's all right. We can
mm.
help them, support them there. They'll fix that. In the meantime, this one's doing really well. It's kind of
Yeah, and it's hard
less
to give
pressure.
equal amount of time every day to each child. Like, as bad as
Yeah.
that sounds, it's very hard because they've all
Oh,
got different needs
impossible.
and wants at different stages, and
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
which can be tricky as a parent. I think I find that
mm,
as I'm starting to get used to life with three, like it's just yeah,
mm.
a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. Splitting yourself in thirds.
so the next one is connection over distance. So it said there just isn't enough research yet to understand the capacities of human babies, toddlers, and children to develop and maintain psychological connections through technology, and what the short and long term impacts of this might be.
This is an interesting one. Like, what if your partner or yourself live and work half the time overseas or interstate or something, and you think, oh, well, it won't affect them.